In this video, we're going to look at how to create a complete linked list. So let's first have a look at the algorithm and then we will try to code it in C and have a look at how to create a complete list. So the algorithm will be something like this. Firstly, I need to decide on how many nodes will be there in my list. So the first thing is read or input, alright, read the number of nodes that you want to create, and then let's say I call it n. So n can be, I want to create 5 nodes, so the value of n will be 5, and so on. Then what is the second step? The second step is we need to create the first node. Create the first node. So this actually we had seen in the previous video of how to create a single node. Then after that, the third step is, since I've created the first node and I have to create n nodes, so now I have to create n minus 1 node because the first node has already been created. So let me create n minus 1 node. So I will say for I is equal to 1, right, to n minus 1. So I go in a loop and I keep on creating nodes. How many nodes? N minus 1 node. Why? Because one of the node has already been created. So comes to a total of n nodes. So now in this loop, what do? The first step in this loop is I create a node. I create a node. Same series of steps that I will be doing here. Alright, I will create a node, but then what will I do? I will not point it to null. After creating this node, I will link this node, alright, the node that I will create here, link the node to the previous node, to the previous. That's what I will do. I will link it to the previous node. So these are the steps that I will need in order to create a complete list. So let's look at it, how it will work out. So I have to decide on n. So let's say n is equal to 3. I have decided n is equal to 3. Let me write it a bit this side. So I decide n is equal to 3. Okay, so then create the first node. So I use malloc and I create the first node. Okay, and the first node points to null. Is that alright? So the first node points to null. Let me do this. Let me draw it a bit this side so that it's easier for my example, so that you understand my example. So here I am creating the very first node, alright, and it is pointing to null since it's the only node. Okay, so let's say I store here the value 1. In this node I store the value 1. Now, so this step is done. Okay, so let's say I call it with whatever name, or I don't name it anything at all for now. Then for I is equal to 1 up to n minus 1. Since n is 3, so n minus 1 will be 2. So I will take the value 1 and 2. So when the value of I is 1, okay, so I will create a node. So create a node. Just create a node using malloc. Alright, and take in the value for that node. So let's say I take in a value called 2. Alright, and then after I create the node, what do? I link the node to the previous node. So link this to the previous node. Alright, then to link this to the previous node, I need to know the name of the previous node. So that is one thing you have to remember. Then after that, you go back and then I becomes 2. So now I is not 1 anymore, I becomes 2. The condition is still satisfied. Alright, so I create a node. Again, I create a node. And let's say this node is storing the value 3. Then what do? I link this node to the previous node. Alright, so now I becomes 3, the condition is not satisfied. That means I am done with creating all the nodes I needed. So the number of nodes to be created were 3, and if you look at the diagram also, I have 1, 2, 3 nodes created. Okay. However, I am adding the new nodes to the beginning of the list. You can also add the new node to the end of the list. You'll have to make some changes in this algorithm, but this is the simplest one to create a list, so I'm discussing this one first. So I think that's simple enough. So let us look at a code of how to do this. I'll just give a brief idea of how to do this. Alright, so the first thing is read the number of nodes. So let's say I have void main here. Alright, I have void main here. So what am I going to do? I'm going to ask for the number of nodes. But you know, in C, all declaration have to be done right at the beginning. So I'm going to create a pointer. Alright, so let's say this is P. And I'm going to create another pointer. Let's say this is Q. Alright, this will be the list, pointing to the list, you know, the header node, and this will be the node I'll be creating every time that will be connecting to the list. Alright, then I will take an integer n, which will store the value of how many nodes do I need. Okay, then I'll ask the user. How many nodes do you want? Alright, enter number of nodes. Alright, enter number of nodes. Enter number of nodes. I will ask the user to do that. Then after this I will take in the input. Alright, using scanf, since it's an integer, so %d ampersand n. N will store the number of nodes that are needed. Then after this, what is the next step to be done? After this step is done. Step number 1 is done through this. Alright, then next is step number 2, create the first node. So this is done. Now I will create the first node. So to create the first node, I will take this particular pointer P. Alright, and if you remember, I will allocate memory to this using malloc. Alright, allocate memory to this using malloc. And what will malloc do? Malloc will take in the size of node. Malloc will take in the size of the node. Alright, size of node. Okay, then what will malloc do? Malloc will return a node pointer. So just like the previous one. Okay, then after this, what am I going to do? I am going to ask the user to enter a value. So let's say you ask the user here to enter the value that is to be stored in the node. Alright, printf, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to take in the value. Scanf %d. Alright, where will I take in the value? In P. So it will be, I'll just write it below here so that it is readable. P info. Alright, P info. Is that okay? I think I'll just write it on top because I'll have to write some more lines of code here. So add P info. Add P info. Okay. Then after that, I will point this particular node to null. Why? Because it's the first node. It has nothing to point to. So it will be pointing to null. Then after this, what will I do? So this step is also done. I've created the first node successfully. So now I will go from I to n-1 and keep on creating the nodes. Alright. So how will I go from I is equal to 1 to n minus 1, I'll just write that here itself. So I will erase this. Hopefully you have a copy of this, or can I just move a bit? Let me just try if I can move a bit here. Okay, I think this should be fine. Then after this I will say for I is equal to 1, I is less than n, okay, I plus plus. That should do. Okay, I think that should do. Then after this, in this for loop, what is going to happen? In this for loop, I am going to first create a node. So what I'm going to do is, this particular pointer q that I had created, I'm going to store the old node there, the previous node there. Alright, store the previous node. Then after that, I'm going to say p is equal to the same step of allocating memory. Alright, and then malloc size of node. Okay, size of node. So if you see here, I've written size of node. Okay, so that should be fine. Then after that, what am I going to do? I'm going to take in input again. Enter the input. Alright, enter here. Please write a print statement. Okay, I am skipping that step. I'm just giving it as a comment. So then I scan the input. %d, okay, comma, p data. Same thing. P data. Alright. P data. Then what am I going to do after this? After I've done this p data scanf, I'm going to say p next is equal to q. Then close the bracket. P next is equal to q, and I am going to close this. Okay, close it at the end. Alright, so when I say p next equal to q, what is the meaning of this? This is actually that particular step which said link the node to the previous node. Alright, and q is holding the previous node. How do we know? From this particular step, q is equal to p. Alright, so this is a sample code of how to create an entire linked list by knowing the number of nodes that a user wants in his or her linked list. So please try this out, and if you have any doubts or queries or any question regarding this particular algorithm we have seen, please put it down in the comment section. We'll surely come back to that and try to clarify whatever doubts you have. And in the next video, we will have a look at how to traverse this list before we go into more complicated operations of a linked list.